Let's talk about the Conor McGregor alleged rape trial, video 2.
Okay, this is my second video commenting on, or covering rather, the Conor McGregor High Court alleged rape trial. Yesterday we heard evidence from a paramedic who examined Miss Hand, Nikita Hand, and the paramedic told the jury that she had not seen such bruising on a patient in a long time. The paramedic is an advanced paramedic, Esna Scully. She was giving evidence in the second week of a civil action by Nikita Hand against Conor McGregor and another man, James Lawrence. They deny Nikita Hand's claims. The paramedic, Miss Scully, said that Miss Hand was withdrawn, agitated and upset when she first saw her in the bedroom of a house in Drimna on the 10th of December 2018. She said Miss Hand's chief concern was about a tampon pushed up too far inside her. She said Miss Hand had a cut on her chin and some bruising around her lower neck. She also had bruising on her chest, legs, buttocks, thighs and lower leg. Miss Scully said Miss Hand was very bruised. She said in her experience, "I haven't seen someone so bruised with that intensity of bruising." She confirmed that she had asked Miss Hand for permission to remove her pyjama bottoms to examine her bruising in the ambulance, as she had to establish the extent of her injuries. She also said Miss Hand had told her she had been grabbed around the neck and said something about fighting somebody off and that there was a threat made to her. She said Miss Hand did not name her attacker. Another paramedic, a colleague, Neil Dempsey, told the court he was called to a house in Drimna on 10th of December 2018. He said he found Nikita Hand in a distressed state in an upstairs bedroom. He said she had visible marks on her neck and breast and was concerned that she had a tampon inside her that had been there for some time. He said she told paramedics she had been sexually assaulted and they decided to take her to a sexual assault treatment unit. He said that Miss Hand's heart rate was elevated and she had a panic attack in the ambulance on the way to the unit. The jury saw footage from inside the ambulance as Miss Hand was being attended to by Mr. Dempsey and Miss Scully, the paramedics. The footage shows Miss Scully examining visible bruising on Miss Hand's thighs and knee. And the fact that the jury can see this footage taken from inside the ambulance, I would have thought is pretty strong evidence, is pretty persuasive evidence, and I'd say it will have a fair old impact on the jury. Later in the footage, Miss Hand can be seen moving off the trolley and sitting up. Mr. Dempsey said she became more distressed during the journey to the hospital and was having a panic attack. She also appeared to be vomiting at one point. During cross-examination by Remy Farrell, senior counsel, Mr. Dempsey, the paramedic, agreed that in his statement to Gardaí 4 days afterwards, he said, "I asked her what happened. She said she could hardly remember, but she was raped." He also agreed that in his statement, he told Gardaí on a few occasions in the hospital, she told her mother, "Ma'am, please don't say anything." GP Emma Quinn said that Miss Hand had visited her on the 19th of December 2018, complaining of neck pain and what she felt was a lump in her neck. She said her complaints were consistent with what she had told her about being restrained around the neck and were consistent with internal bruising. At the outset of proceedings yesterday morning, the judge, Mr. Justice Alex Owen, said he needed to tell the jury that it had come to light that someone had taken a photograph or screenshot of a remote feed of the hearing which had been set up last week for legal practitioners to view the case. Judge Owens said this had been brought to the attention of the court service by a journalist and was being investigated as a breach of data protection and contempt of court. Miss Hand's GP, Dr. Frank Clark, told the court that he had known her since she was a child and had been treating her for 20 years. He said she had a history of anxiety and struggled with her confidence and had been prescribed a low dose of medication for it in the past. He said she was working as a hairdresser, had a child and partner, and her mother needed support with her own health issues from time to time. He said Miss Hand was doing her best, but would tend to be anxious and withdrawn, struggling with confidence. Dr. Clark said he reviewed Miss Hand's treatment from March 2019 in a report completed in November 2020. He said she and her mother came sometimes to appointments alone and sometimes together. Dr. Clark said they were both trying to support each other and both struggling to cope. He said that Miss Hand had been unfit for work since 15th of May 2019. Asked why, he said she was working in a hairdresser's in an environment where it was performance orientated, dealing with people all the time, where she was trying to be cheery and positive, and she was not really coping with that. He said she was very, very conscious of what had happened and of social media and people making comments. The doctor told the court that she was scared of being identified, as she felt unsafe if identified, and that she was basically depressed and anxious and unable to do that kind of work. He said Miss Hand has struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder since the incident in December 2018. He said she had the classic symptoms where people lose hope, hate themselves and start to drink too much. Dr. Clark said PTSD is caused by an extremely stressful or terrifying event. It can cause symptoms including flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, intrusive thoughts, upsetting dreams and nightmares. It was another reason she has not been able to work since May 2019, he said, because the event happened after a work Christmas party and people in work knew all about it. He said people in the street were beginning to know about it because of social media, which was extremely triggering for her. Dr. Clark said other symptoms of PTSD include blame, shame, guilt and memory problems. He added that not remembering aspects of the traumatic event is an important feature of post-traumatic stress disorder. Dr. Clark agreed in cross-examination that he had treated Miss Hand after a road accident in 2016. He agreed she suffered from back pain and was anxious after missing work. He said Miss Hand's symptoms were slow to resolve because of her job, which entailed standing all day and bending over someone. He agreed that her symptoms persisted into 2019, but said this was totally different to PTSD. Psychiatrist Anne Leader told the court she met Nikita Hand in December 2020 and had a long discussion with her, as well as reading a number of other documents including her statement to Gardaí and her medical records. She said in her meeting with Miss Hand she came across as anxious, tearful and as someone who was traumatised. Having considered her history and having reviewed the material given to her, she concluded Miss Hand was suffering from severe PTSD. She said Miss Hand had described the incident to her and described being depersonalised. She said it was common to become detached during a traumatic event which was so shocking a person could not process it. She said Miss Hand described feeling detached and that she just gave up and allowed what was happening to happen. She said this was a common feature in those with PTSD. Miss Leader also described how Miss Hand's counselling notes had recorded her saying she felt like a lump of meat and that she was flabbergasted to learn that James Lawrence had told Gardaí they had consensual sex and had no memory of this at all. She said an important factor in diagnosing PTSD is that symptoms must meet certain thresholds and be severe enough to affect a level of functioning. She said in her opinion Miss Hand had severe PTSD. The symptoms included trying to block memories and emotions, panic attacks, nightmares, numbness and detachment and withdrawing from life. She said Miss Hand had persistent nightmares and flashbacks and classic physical and psychological symptoms. She told Miss Leader she wanted to die, felt dirty and ashamed and guilty. Miss Leader said everything about her presentation was classical of someone who was traumatised and in keeping with PTSD. Under cross-examination by Defence Counsel Remy Farrell, Senior Counsel, Miss Leader agreed that she had prepared her report based on what Miss Hand had told her and other documentation, but had not reviewed CCTV footage. She said Miss Hand had told her she had anxiety prior to 2018 and had been referred to counselling, but said at that stage she did not have PTSD. The Detective Sergeant Peter Woods told the court he met Nikita Hand on the 30th of December at the Beacon Hotel and interviewed her on January the 5th, 2019. She also handed in her mobile phone and the jumpsuit she was wearing on the night of the alleged event. As a result of his investigations, contact was made with a solicitor for Conor McGregor, and an arrangement was made for him to present himself on the 17th of January 2019. He arrived at Dundrum Garda Station that morning with his solicitor and was arrested. That is a day of evidence to do with the medical evidence essentially surrounding or concerning Nikita Hand and the injuries that she suffered, or the medical evidence is certainly supporting that she has suffered from extreme PTSD. So, we'll leave it at that.